with you on a Monday. Hope everybody had a phenomenal weekend, and it's Monday, so that means we welcome in Grant Napear, longtime friend of mine, joining us, and a longtime basketball announcer in the NBA, here to talk a little NBA hoops with us. Hey, Grant, what's going on, man?
Hey, man, and I'm really disappointed. I mean, I see the Warriors banner, but I don't see the gold miner helmet. You know, I just love looking at the gold miner helmet over your shoulder every time you do this, you know?
It's up there. It's up there. So I got to move that thing around. Yeah, exactly. I just dusted it off too, man. And the amount of dust on that thing is just unbelievable. Well, let's get right to yesterday's collapse for the Phoenix Suns. They have Game 7 at home. Chris Paul has had a horrendous record in his career in Game 7s, and this thing was done at half. I mean, what can you say? I mean, in some ways, falling short of a title is probably going to be the legacy of Chris Paul. What was your takeaway on Game 7? The Mavericks rolled into Phoenix and they absolutely wiped up the floor.
I mean, absolutely embarrassing, considering when you look at games 1, 2, and 5 on the Suns' home court, they were all one-sided blowouts. And so you figure Game 7, they're going to have all the momentum because they've already proven that in the previous 3 home games. I don't ever recall a home team in either hockey, the Stanley Cup playoffs, or the NBA Finals coming out and playing that poorly. Yeah, give credit to Dallas, but, you know, Devin Booker, who popped off, you know, acting like big man on campus after Game 5 with his trash talking, was invisible in both Game 6 and 7. But Chris Paul, think about this, Larry. The guy's a 12-time All-Star, right? One of the top point guards of his generation. Most people would agree with that. And yet, only once in his NBA career has he made it out of round 2, and that was last year when the Phoenix Suns made it all the way to the NBA Finals. We're up 2-0 against Milwaukee, then lost 4 straight. This year, round 2, they're up 2-0 against Dallas. They lose in 7. They get blown out and embarrassed on their home court. And, you know, it's one thing for Chris Paul not to win in Game 7s. Chris Paul wasn't even on the floor yesterday. He looked horrible. I don't know if Chris Paul could play any worse than he did yesterday. I kind of look at Chris Paul the same way I look at James Harden. You know, they can do great things, but when you absolutely positively have to have them in the biggest of games, more times than not, they're not there. You can't blame everything on Chris Paul, Larry, but because everybody was terrible. And how about DeAndre Ayton blowing off the media after the game? Just absolutely gutless. But let's face it, Paul's the leader of that team. Say what you want about Booker. Chris Paul's the leader of that team. And the leader was a no-show in the biggest game of the year for the Phoenix Suns.
I mean, it's a bad deal when you're showing more fire against a 15-year-old than you are in Game 7 of the final, Game 7 of the playoffs at home in a do or die situation. Chris Paul now, Grant, 0 for 6 in his last 6 Game 7s. It's the longest streak in NBA history. And then I'm torn on this player because, man, he went to OKC. OKC was good. He went to Houston. Houston was good. He went to Phoenix. Phoenix is in the finals. I can't decide if Chris Paul is absolutely the key figure or if he is a guy who's just good enough to get you beat. I mean, he doesn't have the ring, but almost everywhere he's been in recent years, he's elevated that team. When you look at what that team did before he got there and after he left, you can't help but argue the value of Chris Paul. I mean, how do you sum up his career at this point?
You sum it up very simply. You can't win with Chris Paul. Now, how do you define winning? I define winning in pro sports as winning a championship, right? The Phoenix Suns won 64 games, did they not this year, Larry?
Right.
They won 64 games, all right? That's freaking awesome. I mean, that's big-time basketball. So a team that wins 64 games, has home court advantage, is up 2-0 in a series, and you lose in Game 7 where you're not even competitive and Chris Paul was as bad as anybody on the floor, I sum it up like this. Chris Paul will make you better, but Chris Paul will not win you a championship. How else could I mean, you and I talked about this last week or 2 weeks ago when he was with the Clippers. They had Blake Griffin in their prime, DeAndre Jordan in their prime. They had very good records. Doc had a team that won, high 50s every year. They couldn't make it out of the second round. You talked about Oklahoma City. You talked about New Orleans. How could a guy that plays the most important position on the floor in the NBA, make no mistake about it, point guard now is the most important position on the floor. It used to be center, Larry, but that changed over the years. So a guy that is the point guard, you can't win a championship if he's that great. And again, I think he is. He's a 12-time All-Star. I don't have the answer, Larry. How could the guy be so bad yesterday? I mean, it's one thing, Larry, if he came out and played his ass off and had his usual game. He was an absolute complete no-show. He'd be the equivalent, Larry, of Ted Williams in the biggest game of the year going 0 for 5 with 5 strikeouts, right?
Yeah. I mean, the thing was done at halftime. He had 1 point. He had 1 point at half. Booker had 2. Together in the first half, when the game was decided, they went 0 for 11. Yep. I mean, that's your legacy, man. That is your legacy until you change it. Now, let's get to the other story here, because the other story is also pretty damn interesting, and that's DeAndre Ayton. I don't know what's going on with DeAndre Ayton. He played very little, and at the third quarter, it looked like in the third quarter of last night's game, Ayton and Monty Williams needed to be restrained from each other, according to reports. Yep. What is going on there? I mean, that's the other story here. You look at the minutes, the way they were doled out in Game 7. Paul played 31, Booker played 37, Bridges played 33, Crowder played 27, 20 off the bench for Cam Johnson, 17 minutes for DeAndre Ayton in a series where Dallas didn't have a real counter to him. So what do you make of that?
Well, there's obviously a lot going on behind the scenes. We're talking about Monty Williams here. I don't ever recall a player getting into it with Monty Williams. I mean, that just doesn't happen. And again, Ayton, gutless to even talk about it after the game. He blows off the media and just, got the hell out of Dodge. I don't know what to make of it other than it is not good. All right. Monty Williams is a guy that if you've watched over his coaching career, again, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't ever recall a flare-up with a player in the middle of a game with Monty Williams. So we're going to find out more about this story. You asked me what's going on. I only know what I read, just like you do. We'll find out what really happened in the coming weeks and months of this offseason for the Phoenix Suns. It's a bad look. Now, I don't think it would have mattered if DeAndre Ayton had played 48 minutes. All right. They weren't going to beat Dallas yesterday with how bad Paul and Booker were. I mean, you can say all you want about Ayton, and it is a big story. You're right. But when your backcourt of Chris Paul and Devin Booker, as you said, what do they have, a combined 3 points at the half?
Yeah,
are you freaking kidding
3
me?
points.
Think about that, Larry. Game 7, an all-star backcourt with 3 points. Like, that's not even possible, is it? Seriously, Larry, is that? Can you imagine what the odds would have been before the game if somebody said, okay, here's a betting line. Chris Paul and Devin Booker, 2 or less points in the first half. What do you think the odds would have been on that,
I mean, it's incredible, really. I mean,
right.
Well, how about this? JaVale McGee took 7 shots. Chris Paul took 8 shots in the game. JaVale McGee is taking the same number of shots as your leader. The Phoenix is screwed up. Let me ask you about Monty Williams, because I told you last week I thought Monty Williams would be my coach. If I could start with anybody, I'd start with Monty Williams. I really love Monty Williams, but a lot of people feel like that the real MVP of this series was in fact Jason Kidd, and that Kidd outcoached Monty Williams. What do you think of Kidd? What did you think of the job that he did in this series?
I think he's got Luka Doncic and Monty Williams doesn't. That's what I think. Let's face it. I'm not down on Monty Williams because of what happened yesterday. I still think Monty Williams is a great coach. Players love playing for him. I mean, Larry, look at what he did from day one going into Phoenix, right? I mean, what he did last year and this year. So I'm sorry. I'm not gonna come down hard on Monty Williams. What do I think Jason Kidd did? I think he was smart and had Luka Doncic, run the whole show. That's what I think. Listen, they Spencer Dinwiddie. I mean, look at the players around Luka that in games 6 and 7. Well, shouldn't say game 6, but the games that Dallas had to win, the 3 games at home, and then look at what happened yesterday, right? I mean, Luka took over the game, but he also had some help. But Jason Kidd's fortunate that he has Luka Doncic on his team. That was the difference in this series. Was it not? Don't you think Luka was the difference in this series?
Oh, no, just no doubt. There's no doubt about it. Luka's been incredible ever since he got healthy. A guy in the chat says Monty Williams accused Ayton of quitting on the team. Well, there's as you referenced, Grant, there's probably more to that story than just that. But I mean, and Ayton's a restricted free agent this summer. So suddenly the Phoenix Suns have all kinds of decisions to make as far as the future of their franchise.
And isn't it interesting? Because everybody talks about Sacramento, and rightfully so. Think about this. The Phoenix Suns had the number 1 pick in the draft that year, and they took DeAndre Ayton. Now, Aiton's a good player, but
Yeah.
he's not Luka Doncic. Think about what happened yesterday. The player that Phoenix did not take went into their building and beat them. The Kings took Marvin Bagley, who's not even with the Kings anymore, right?
Right.
The Atlanta Hawks wanted Trae Young, and as good as Trae Young is, he's not Luka Doncic. So think about if you could do that draft all over again. Phoenix would have Luka Doncic. I don't know who the hell the Kings would have, but the point is, everyone bags on Sacramento, and rightfully so, they should. But there were 3 teams that did not want Luka Doncic on the roster: the Phoenix Suns, the Sacramento Kings, and the Atlanta Hawks. How about that, Larry?
Yeah, no, it's amazing. And it's funny, Mark in the chat here says Phoenix's bench isn't that strong. I kind of disagree. I thought Phoenix has a pretty damn good bench. Shamet, Payne, Biyombo, JaVale McGee, Cam Johnson, Torrey Craig.
They won 64 games, for crying out loud. You can't win 64 games without a good bench.
I like their bench. I thought their bench was good this year. All right, let's flip over, because a lot of people think, well, we're spending too much time bagging on Phoenix and not enough time praising the victor in this situation. What do you make of the Mavericks? I mean, I'm looking at this team, Grant. I'm just amazed that they got through. Why? Well, they got Luka. Jalen Brunson's playing the best basketball of his life. He had 24 yesterday. But, I mean, the rest of their starting 5, Powell, Dorian Finney-Smith, Bullock can shoot it, former Carolina kid who absolutely can shoot the hell out of the ball. Bertans can shoot it, but he's long in the tooth at this point. Spencer Dinwiddie has dialed it back to yesteryears. Is that the key to the Mavericks? Is it Dinwiddie? Because he had 30 off the bench, and he's played terrific basketball in these playoffs.
He's one of the keys, but the real key is having Luka on the floor. I mean, you saw what happened in games 1 and 2, even though Dallas won game 2 against the Jazz in round 1 after Luka did not play. And, Luka obviously, I think, came back in game 4. And from that point forward, Dallas has been a different team. Although I say that, and in games 1 and 2 in Phoenix, they weren't competitive. And in game 5 in Phoenix, they got blown out. So that shows and tells me that they still have some vulnerabilities. Okay. The disparity between what we saw in the first 6 games and then what we saw yesterday, but the first 6 games in the Dallas Mavericks and the Suns was all about who had home court. Guess what? You think Dallas is going to go in and beat Golden State in a game 7? I sure don't.
I don't think so.
No, I don't think so. So Dallas better figure out, and I know yesterday they did, they better figure out how to win one of the first 2 games in the upcoming series, or I don't think they will beat Golden State, as great as Luka is. This is going to be a fascinating series. I'm getting back to your question, though. To me, it's all Luka, and obviously you need help. He can't do it by himself. But when Luka plays the way he did yesterday, Larry, the guy was just freaking unbelievable.
Yeah, he had 6 threes. He was 12 of 19. He was perfect from the foul line. The Mavs were 12 of 12 from the foul line. Not only that, he mixed in 10 rebounds, 9 on the defensive glass, 4 assists, a couple steals. He only turned it over twice. He was plus 37. He had the ball in his hands all day. So it was an incredible performance for Luka, especially on that stage. He basically crossed over Cam Johnson, made him fall to the ground, and then he stuck the 3 right in his face. Luka's playing incredible. Here now, let's fast forward to this next round. What does Golden State do? It seems like they're almost ideally suited to defend a player like this. They got about 7 different guys on this team that could probably take turns. If you're Golden State, who would you put on Luka?
Great question. Let me first of all point out that what I just said about Dallas, you can make the same point about Golden State, right? They did not play well in game 4, a sloppy game that they barely won. They go into Memphis in a game 5 and look like the Suns did last night almost. That's how bad they were. Come home and beat Memphis in game 6, but I thought were sloppy for a lot of the game, Larry. And again, with a couple of minutes left to go in the fourth quarter of that game, it was in doubt. So I think both these teams right now are kind of mirror images of one another, of having some vulnerabilities. Larry, when the Warriors were winning championships, and correct me if I'm wrong, did they ever have a game like they had in the Memphis series in game 5 where they got that thoroughly embarrassed? But who?
If they did, I can't recall.
I don't either. I don't recall that. So who are they going to put on Luka? It's a long series. I think they're going to make changes. I don't think you can just guard Luka one way. I think you're going to see adjustments not only from game to game, Larry. I think you're going to see adjustments within the game. You're going to have to give Luka Doncic different looks all the time. I just think that's the only way to do it. I don't think if you're Golden State, are you going to play the same defense all the time on Luka? No, you can't. You have to change it up on him.
I mean, I guess I would start with Wiggins. Wiggins the only thing about it is Luka weighs what? Luka goes about 235. Yep. And Wiggins weighs about 195. So that's a tough matchup for Wiggins, especially if there's any inside action. But the Mavs beat Golden State 3 out of 4 times. They beat them 99-82 in game 1 this year. Curry had 14. Warriors beat them 130-92 in a game where Kuminga went off for 22. Mavs beat them 107-101. Luka had 34 in that game, 24 for Dinwiddie. And then Mavericks won 122-113 the 4th time around. And then that game, Luka went for 41. Yeah. I agree with you, though. I would start Wiggins on him. I think I would throw Kuminga on him at different parts of the game because Kuminga's got such length and strength and could bother him for short amounts of time. I would even put Draymond on him at times if I felt like he could somehow stay out of foul trouble and bother Luka a little bit. Maybe Klay Thompson, if Iguodala's healthy, maybe a little Iguodala. I don't know. I guess I'd start with Wiggins. I mean, it's a tough call because, Luka is absolutely in full throttle right now, and anybody that you put on him is in danger of fouling out in the first half or at least getting into severe foul trouble in that first half.
And another sidebar is who's going to argue with the officials more, Luka or Draymond? Because they bitch and moan after every call. No, that's just the way it's going to be. And so that is an aspect of this series that you are going to have to watch. And how are the officials going to call this series? And how much leniency are they going to give to 2 players who really complain after every whistle? And again, we know what would happen with Draymond if he gets another flagrant, right, Larry? So these are issues that are sidebars to what's going to go on.
Steven says Luka's rebounding is the difference for their small lineup. I mean, he obviously is doing a lot of rebounding for them, but the other question that's coming up: do you think Golden State will double team Luka? I think they should.
They have to.
I mean,
they have to.
But I mean, the guys who scare me in this series the most are Bullock and Bertans because those guys can flat out shoot it. Yep. And if you double Luka, man, he's at 6'8". He's going to find those guys. It's not like they won't be able to find those guys.
He throws it over the top. I mean, you do have to make Luka pass the ball. I mean, and 100% correct. Do you think Golden State will double team Luka on the screen? They're going to have to, but they're going to have to give him different looks all the time. Luka's too good and too smart. You can't just play in the same way all the time, which is true in most NBA games. There are adjustments from within the game, game to game. I mean, I think it's going to be a long series, Larry. So
you do? You think it's going to be a long series?
I do. Well, I think it's going to go at least 6 games. I think anytime it's 6 or more, I consider that a long series.
It's funny because the odds are well in Golden State's favor. I mean, we both expected Golden State to be favored, but Golden State's plus 220 or minus 260, I should say, and the Mavs are plus 220.
You know why I say that? I say that because I'm looking at Golden State in game 4, 5, and 6. Were you impressed with where they played in any of those games, Larry? Did that look to you like the A version of the Golden State Warriors taking on a team without John Morant? And yes, I understand that without Morant, Memphis played pretty well, but this is the playoffs. They didn't have Morant, and game 4 was horrible. Game 5 was horrible, and I wasn't impressed with how they played in game 6 to wrap up the series. So I do think that Mavericks will win a couple games in this series. And I'll tell you, Larry, if you and I are talking in 2 weeks from now and the Dallas Mavericks are on their way to the NBA championship, that wouldn't shock me. I wouldn't even be surprised. I'd be a little surprised, but I mean, I wouldn't fall out of my chair. I think the Warriors are a better team for this reason. And I've talked about this from day one when you and I came on and talked about the postseason. The Warriors' playoff experience will be the difference again in this series. Their pedigree, their resume with playoffs and winning championships, to me, will define this series.
It's a really interesting series. Why? Well, the Warriors are big favorites, and the Warriors went 1-3 against Dallas this year, and they went 2-5 against Dallas over the last couple of years. And sometimes teams just have your number. Sometimes it's, the NBA is so much about matchups and how you match up with a particular team. I'm just looking at this Dallas team, Grant, and I'm trying to convince myself that this is going to be a series, and I just can't see it. I cannot envision it. Why? Because I'm looking at Dallas and I'm thinking they don't have enough firepower. They've got Luka and Brunson. I mentioned the 2 3-point shooters, but Bertans is old at this point. Bullock is he, for every game that he goes for double figures, he has 5 games where he goes for single figures. Dinwiddie is playing retro Dinwiddie. I guess if Dinwiddie continued to play at that high of a level, maybe, but I don't see it. To me, it seems like this is something where you throw tons of bodies and tons of different looks at Luka, and don't leave Bullock and Bertans on the perimeter, and you're moving on. To me, I think it's Warriors in 5.
I don't, and I'll tell you why.
Why,
Larry? The Dallas Mavericks just beat a team that won 64 games in the regular season.
But we both agree that Phoenix is probably not right for whatever reason.
But we both agreed.
Phoenix barely got by New Orleans, Grant.
We both agreed, and we both picked Phoenix to beat Dallas before the series started.
Yep, we did.
You and I both thought that after it was 2-0, you and I both thought that Phoenix would win 1 game in Dallas and maybe end this thing in 5, and they end up losing in 7. So, again, if you tell me that the Golden State Warriors team that played in games 1 and 2, even though they lost game 2 and game 3, but if you look at the Warriors in those games, if those are the teams that are going to show up against Dallas, I could see that. But I just can't get out of my mind what I watched from Golden State in games 4, 5, and 6. They didn't look that good. And so they are going to have to play better in order to, if you think, end this series in 5. I don't think there's any way they end this series in 5 playing the way they did in those 3 games that I mentioned. I wasn't that impressed with them in those games. I agree.
I'm with you. And I'll even add this. The Mavericks, their renaissance here is not about this Phoenix series. I think they had the best record in the NBA in the second half of the year.
Yes.
Or if not the best, they were right there with the best records in the NBA. So I don't know what it's an odd rotation. It's an odd basketball team. Powell, really? I mean, Dorian Finney-Smith, Bullock, Brunson. I mean, it really is the Lucas. I mean, it's like, I just kind of think Golden State has they've got a different roster than Phoenix. Phoenix didn't seem like they had anybody to really throw at Luka, where it seems like the Warriors have many guys they could throw at Luka. You could put Klay Thompson on him. You could put Wiggins on him. You could put Kuminga on him. You could put Draymond on him. Kerr said Gary Payton could be back at the end of this series. Is Andre Iguodala coming back? I mean, there's so many different guys. Kuminga, and they got bodies they can throw at Luka all day, this entire series, and give him different looks in every game. I think that could be the difference, really, and Golden State's experience.
The experience to me is the difference, and I'm picking Golden State to win this series. But again, I want to you just talked about the record between these two teams in the last 2 years, which can be a little misleading. Did Steph play in all these games? Klay Thompson sure didn't. Right. Did Draymond? So, but the Dallas Mavericks are already through 2 rounds, and you cannot ignore, as you just pointed out, what they did in the second half of the season, which carried into the playoffs, and now they just beat the number 1 seed and kicked their ass on their home floor. I know they're reaching now for a different animal in the Golden State Warriors, but I think the Mavericks will win a couple games in this series. I'd be surprised if they don't.
Yeah, no, I hear you, but I just have a hard time, picturing it happening. J Dust 20 says Memphis was a strange series for Golden State. Gary Payton got hurt. Ja Morant went out. Kerr was out for a number of games. The Warriors looked discombobulated. I got to start using discombobulated more. It is interesting to see what we may see in this series, because you're right. Golden State wasn't necessarily as sharp as we've seen them in this last last round. And then the Mavericks are clearly in a feel good right now. And they feel good. They're taking the floor feeling like they're playing with the house's money. They know, believe me, the Warriors, the pressure's on Golden State, right? Wouldn't you say?
Sure.
Everybody
Absolutely.
expects Golden State to win. Let's jump to the other series because we're now going to get Boston, Miami, because Boston put away the Bucks in Game 7 in Boston over the weekend. I guess I wasn't as surprised by this one because Milwaukee upset Boston in Game 5, and was it going to happen 2 games in a row or 2 home games in a row? Giannis was incredible as far as the stat line: 25 points, 20 rebounds, 9 assists, 21 for Drew Holiday, 15 for Brooke Lopez. But man, the Matthews, the Wesley Matthews, Grayson Allen, Pat Connaughton trio pretty much shot him out of it. I mean, those 3 guys, Grant, shot 2 of 16 from the field, and none of them wound up with any points at all to speak. I think Connaughton had 2, Allen had 1, Matthews had 3. They fired up a ton of shots. Was it as simple as those 3 guys shot the Bucks out of it?
I think so. I mean, I really do, because you know what you're going to get from Giannis. I do think the Middleton injury did show itself towards the end of this series, but I can't wait for this next series. With Jimmy Butler and Jason Tatum. Boy, I'm just telling you right now that it's going to be one hell of a series.
Who's your lean? Who's your lean there? Because I mean, Boston's getting great numbers now to Grant Williams, the former Tennessee Volunteer. Al Horford is playing. He's having a career renaissance. Marcus Smart is healthy. They're getting good. Pritchard dropped 14 off the bench. I mean, Boston's playing well right now, and Tatum is, I think, one of the great young players in the league. How do you see Heat and Celts?
I picked the Heat before the playoffs started to come out of the East, but I actually think Boston's a better team than they are right now. Now, the one thing about the Heat, and it's kind of similar to Boston, but the Heat are just defend the hell out of you on every position. And as Jimmy Butler goes the Heat. I know that they have not had to rely on Kyle Lowry in and out of the lineup, but I don't know if the Miami Heat will be able to get through Boston without Kyle Lowry being on the floor, being healthy, and being that guy. I don't know about you, Larry, but I look at the matchups between these 2 teams, and I like the matchups favoring Boston. I really do. Now this to me will be a long series. I do think that's going to this series is going to be a long series, but I think the matchups favor Boston a little bit. What about you?
I like Boston too. I first of all, you've been in every arena and know every kind of fan base. To me, it just seems like the Boston fans just come screaming through the television. Maybe it's just another arena, and these guys don't notice the fans, but it just seems like when the Celtics are at home, the hostility of the crowd is just is a factor. Am I overreading that or no?
No, you're 100% correct. It's the same thing in New York. It's the same thing in Philadelphia when those teams are good. And just wait till you see how many Boston jerseys you see in the arena down here in Miami. I mean, there are going to be a lot of Boston fans in attendance, and there won't be as many Miami fans up in Boston for obvious reasons. So to me, and when I say obvious reasons, there are a lot of transplanted people down here, and then the Boston fans, they'll travel and they'll get their tickets on the secondary market to go to the games. The environment at the Garden in Boston is night and day to the environment down here for a Miami Heat game. Night and day. I mean, you can't even compare the 2. But we've also seen both these teams can win on the road. I mean, if you're a number 1 seed, you can't be a number 1 seed without playing very well on the road. And Boston has already proven they can win on the road. I mean, they just beat Milwaukee 2 games in the last series. So I don't really know if home court's going to be that big of a deal in this series, because both these teams have proven that they can go on the road and win and beat very good teams.
Yeah, and they're both really well coached. I guess I would lean towards Boston. If you is the league have a rooting interest in this thing? I mean, Skip Bayless is convinced that the league is desperate to have the Warriors in the finals, and I can see what his argument is. I just don't know if I buy it.
I think with Luka being the guy that would be in the finals, if the Warriors aren't there, I think that would be a great selling point for the NBA. I mean, I would think, though, in a perfect world, Larry, the league would love to see Boston and Golden State. I mean,
So
That would
who of the Final Four, if you're picking it, who are you going with?
to win the championship.
Yeah. Who's
hate
going to
to
win
say-
these two series? Who's going to win the finals?
I hate to say this, being a New Yorker, but I think right now the Celtics might have the best team in basketball. So I'm going to say Boston
To win it all, to beat
Yep.
Golden State in the finals.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, a lot of people thought the West was better, but now you're looking at Boston. And why is it the emergence of Horford?
Yes.
Is it the emergence of Grant Williams? Is it
It's
the
Jason
greatness
Tatum.
of Tatum, the health of
Yep.
Smart, Brown? What's your difference maker with Boston?
Two things. Tatum is now a superstar in the league, and they have guys that can flat out stop you. Okay, Marcus Smart, obviously. But they also will defend you. And I like, assuming that they beat Miami, I just like the guys that they have to match up with the backcourt of Golden State. I don't think they can stop them, but I think they can make life difficult and contain them enough to win the series, assuming, as we point out, it's Golden State and Boston. So now that I said that, it's probably going to be Miami and Dallas. Sorry, Warrior fans. But
Tom Pierce says
I'll
minus
ask you this.
three-point shooting. It could be the factor.
Do you think there's a lot that separates these four teams? I guess the question is, if I told you that Miami would win the championship, Boston would win the championship, Golden State would win the championship, and Dallas would win the championship, again, I would say if I had to rank those three, I'd put Dallas fourth. Of those
No doubt.
right?
No doubt.
So I don't see Dallas winning the championship. I could see Golden State, I could see Miami, I could see Boston.
Yeah, I would say I'd probably go Boston, Warriors, Heat, Dallas. And it's funny, Delta on the chat says, stop disrespecting Dallas. Stop acting like players like Finney Smith isn't a top 2 or 3 defensive player in the league. He'll clamp down on Clay. Brunson's better, too, than Clay at this point. Mavericks in 6. Brunson is a better 2 guard than Klay Thompson at this point. Now, Klay Thompson didn't necessarily look like Klay Thompson, but don't tell me Jalen Brunson is better than Klay Thompson. I don't, no world that I've ever seen. I mean, I love Brunson going back to college. I think he's a really smart, quality player.
Let's
and I'll
not get
admit,
carried away.
yeah, it's like he carried away. Hey, let's finish with this one. This will be the 5th straight season that there's a different NBA champion. First time there has been a streak this long, going back to 75 through 79. So let's see. Can we name those? Well, who was the 75 champ? The Warriors, right?
Yeah, the Warriors.
The 76 champ was the Celtics over Phoenix.
I think so. They won there, and
77 was the Bullets over the Sonics.
And Seattle won 79, right?
I thought it was well, let's see. I thought 77 1 year Lonnie Shelton and Gus Williams and those guys won. Seattle won one, but
Right.
didn't the Bullets win one?
Yeah, with Dick Motta was the coach.
Yeah, so the Bullets got one, the Warriors got one, the Celtics got one, the Supersonics got one, and then that takes us to 79. And wasn't 79 Magic over the Sixers?
I thought it was Seattle with Lenny Wilkins. No.
I thought that was 78. Well, either way, what do you think? I mean, 5 straight years a different NBA champion. I like this. I like when it's not just a run and it's just the same teams over and over again. I'm a Warrior fan, as you know, but I got tired of Warriors Cavs. I personally would love to see Warriors Celtics in a knockdown, drag out, memorable East Coast, West Coast, bad blood kind of a 7-gamer. I think it would be awesome.
I'm just hoping that the rest of the NBA playoffs can live up to what we've seen in the NHL playoffs, because I've been watching hockey every night, and what I saw yesterday, just 2 thrilling, amazing Game 7s that go into overtime, and we had 2 duds in the NBA. I'm really hoping that these next series are going to be great and going to be entertaining, where, I know that they went 7, but there were a lot of bad games. You know, that Dallas Phoenix series was not entertaining. I mean, the games were not very good. There were a lot of bad games in the Golden State Memphis series. Game 1 was thrilling. We know that game 4, even though the Warriors barely won, was close. So they had that drama. But I didn't think the last round of the NBA playoffs were that good. I'm really hoping things pick up now with Miami, Boston, and Dallas and Golden State. I think the league is got their fingers crossed that we're going to see better basketball, or I shouldn't say better basketball, more competitive basketball.
It's funny. You're bringing up the hockey playoffs. It makes me think when I was an intern for you way back when, and I'm cutting your hockey highlights, and it was I remember you started laughing so hard one night because I had found the Pittsburgh Penguins, hack me in the back with a hacksaw. Mike Lang.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh! I mean, that guy just classic. Right. Who's your pick right now? I mean, I know there's a ways to go in the NHL, but who do you think ultimately is going to get crowned champion in the NHL? It's always hard to pick. I mean, don't you think? I mean, I don't think there's been too many years in the NHL outside of some of those Red Wing years where it was like, yeah, who do you like? I mean, it's typically wide open.
I go with the team that's got the hot goaltender, and what Vasilevsky did in the series that just concluded in Toronto, and the fact that they've won back-to-back Stanley Cups and they know how to win. They had a bad injury in the game yesterday, so I'm going to wait and see on point how he is. They play now the team that won the President's Trophy for the most points in Florida. If Tampa gets by Florida, I think they're going to win the Cup because their goaltending is just absolutely spectacular. And I tell you, I don't know if you stayed up last night, or when I say stayed up, I don't know if you watched the game, but 2 nights ago, I love what I watched in Edmonton. Calgary beating Dallas, but I still think the team is going to come out of the East. And right now, I think Tampa is the team. I think Carolina will beat the Rangers. If Tampa beats Florida, I think they're going to be on their way to a 3rd straight cup. I really do.
Wow. Tampa, and Tampa's thought to be one of the best teams all year, though, haven't they?
Yeah, I mean, they're always good.
They've been incredible. Yeah. Let's pay the sponsors here. If one of our sponsors is Tellmetrics.co. If you're an orthopedic surgeon, an occupational therapist, a chiropractor, or a physical therapist, Tellmetrics is designed for you to use in your practice and will greatly benefit your patients. If you're listening to this going, what is Tellmetrics.co? Well, Tellmetrics uses computer vision and artificial intelligence and provides a platform for outpatient rehab therapy services, both in the clinical and telehealth environments. Using Tellmetrics can improve your patient's experience and much more. So for all your sports injury needs, or if you're a physical rehabilitation specialist of any kind, go to Tellmetrics.co. And thanks to Casey Bateman and the good people at Tellmetrics. Also, Dan Cochimilio, a retirement planning specialist, SecureMoney.com. Give Danny a call, 925-628-9966. A lot of uncertainty in the world. You want to make sure that your money is taken care of, and Dan can help you on that front. Also, thanks to Casera's Italian Menswear in Dublin. If you want to support the show by buying a Krueg Show podcast T-shirt, you can get them. You can get them right there in Dublin at Casera's Italian Menswear, 7372 San Ramon Road, Dublin, California. Go say hello to Tony, and he'll sell you a T-shirt. They're $25. I get none of that money, by the way, but check out Casera's. And then our brand new sponsor, New York Style Italian Sausage. Whether it's breakfast sausage, Italian mild, Italian spicy, chorizo, you can't go wrong with New York style Italian sausage, often imitated, never equaled, thanks to Mike and all the people at New York Italian Sausage. And be sure to hit the like and subscribe button. Be extra sure to hit that notification bell so you can catch all the upcoming Krueg shows. I'm loving the YouTube show. Hope you guys are as well. Having a lot of fun. Thanks to Len, thanks to Ryan, thanks to the sponsors, and thanks to all you in the chat. And Grant, you always fire, man. Have a phenomenal rest of your week.
You too.
Great. This is a great time of the year when we got NHL playoffs, NBA playoffs, baseball if you're a baseball fan, football just around the corner. It's a great time of year, but always incredible to catch up with you and tell people where, if they're hearing you on our show and they are not as familiar with what you're doing, tell them where they can catch your podcast and where they can find you.
Easiest thing is to go to my website, ifyoudon'tlikethat.com. I put out 2 podcasts a week. I also have a live show every day on Listen App at 3:00 Pacific. It's great. You can call. We have a lot of fun. So I do that Monday through Friday. I do a show twice a week with Sean Salisbury on NoFilter.net, No Filter Network. So I'm busy, just like you are. I'm doing a lot of things, but the easiest way to get my work is ifyoudon'tlikethat.com.
If you don't like that, love that line. Grant, good to see you, man. Have a great week.
Thanks, Larry.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful.